Maya, 35, moves to Golden Hills for a fresh start. But Ellen's racist remarks and Edith's coldness greet her. Edith falsely accuses Maya of poisoning after receiving cookies. At trial, hope wanes until Clare reveals a web of discrimination. Can Maya transform this divided community? Watch and see. Hey everyone, welcome to Worldly Whispers. Let's get started. Maya Anderson, at 35, was eager for a fresh start. She left the bustling city behind and moved to Golden Hills, a place the real estate agent had painted as a picture, perfect suburban haven. As the moving truck rumbled to a stop in front of 5042 Maple Lane, Maya stepped out, expecting to be greeted by a warm community. However, what she encountered was far from her expectations. The neighborhood of Golden Hills seemed almost too perfect. Row upon row of nearly identical houses lined the quiet street. The lawns were manicured to an immaculate state, and the late afternoon sun cast a warm glow, highlighting the vibrant flowers in each front yard. But there was an odd sense of stillness. It was a summer afternoon, yet no children played on the lawns, and no neighbors chatted across fences. The only sound was the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. As Maya began to unload boxes from the truck, she noticed movement behind the curtains in nearby houses. Curious faces peeked out briefly and then disappeared. She smiled and waved, hoping to initiate friendly contact, but no one reciprocated. This eerie silence and the lack of response made her feel uneasy. Shortly after, she met Ellen Whitaker, a middle-aged woman walking a small dog. Maya greeted her with enthusiasm, saying, "Hi there, I'm Maya, just moved in today." Ellen, who had been avoiding eye contact, seemed startled. She stopped her dog and turned to face Maya with a tight smile. Maya continued, expressing her excitement about being in the lovely neighborhood. But Ellen's response was cold. She gave Maya a once-over and said, "Yes, well, we don't see a lot of new faces around here, especially ones like yours." The thinly veiled racism in Ellen's statement hit Maya like a slap. She was stunned, but tried to maintain her composure, not wanting to start off on the wrong foot in her new home. Over the next few days, Maya's attempts to integrate into the community only led to more disappointment. During her walks around the neighborhood, she couldn't help but notice the uniformity. Every lawn seemed to be mowed to the exact same height, and the flower arrangements in each garden bed were strikingly similar. Even the curtains in the windows looked alike from house to house. It was as if individuality was not allowed in this place. At the local grocery store, Maya hoped to have a more positive interaction. But here too, she was met with cool politeness. People nodded at her, but their smiles were strained, and conversations hushed as she approached. She overheard two women in the cereal aisle talking about her. One said, "Did you see her in the Mitchell's old place? I know what was the HOA thinking, letting someone like that move in." Maya's hand froze as she reached for a box of cereal. She was filled with shame and anger, but felt powerless to confront such deep-seated prejudices. Determined not to give up, Maya decided to try a classic approach to neighborliness. She remembered her mother's words, "You catch more flies with honey than vinegar." So, she decided to bake her mother's famous banana bread and share it with her neighbors, starting with Edith, her next door neighbor. Maya spent the morning gathering ingredients and baking the bread. The sweet aroma filled her new house, chasing away some of the gloom. Once the bread was cooled and wrapped in a cheerful tea towel, she took a deep breath and headed next door. She rang the doorbell of Edith's house with a hopeful smile on her face. After a long moment, Edith opened the door a crack. Her expression was neutral, showing neither welcome nor hostility. Maya introduced herself and held out the banana bread, saying it was her mother's recipe. Edith's gaze flicked from Maya's face to the bread and back again. She made no move to take the offering. Instead, she commented that Maya was the new owner of the Mitchell place, her tone flat. Maya tried to engage her in small talk, expressing her love for the quiet and beautiful neighborhood. But Edith's response was curt. She insinuated that people in the neighborhood liked things to stay the way they were and didn't take kindly to disruptions. Before Maya could respond, Edith stepped back inside, leaving Maya standing on the porch, rejected and dejected. Despite these setbacks, Maya was not ready to give up on her new home. She told herself that she just needed to be more persistent, that she would find a way to break through the coldness of her neighbors and build a life in Golden Hills. Little did she know that her troubles were just beginning. Despite the chilly reception from her neighbors, Maya remained resolute. She remembered her grandmother's renowned chocolate chip cookie recipe, believing it could be the key to thawing the ice. Early the next morning, filled with new hope, Maya started baking. The kitchen soon filled with the inviting aroma of vanilla and chocolate, replacing the musty smell of moving boxes. Once the cookies cooled, she carefully arranged them in a jar and set off to Edith's house. When Edith opened the door, her eyes narrowed at the sight of Maya and the cookies. Maya greeted her warmly. "Good morning, Edith. These are my grandmother's special cookies." Edith didn't reply immediately. Instead, she stepped onto the porch, forcing Maya back a bit. Maya, undaunted, held out the jar, saying, "I just want us to be good neighbors." After a tense moment, Edith took the cookies with a reluctant "thank you" and went back inside. Maya felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this was a start. However, just 15 minutes after returning home, a loud knock startled Maya. She opened the door to find 2 police officers. "Miss Anderson," the first officer asked. Maya nodded, her heart pounding. "We've received a report from Edith Carpenter. She claims you tried to poison her," the second officer stated. Maya was shocked. "What? That's impossible. I only gave her cookies." But the officers were unmoved. "Please come with us. We have questions," the first officer said firmly. As Maya stepped onto the porch, she noticed neighbors peeking through curtains. The humiliation was overwhelming. She protested. "This is ridiculous. I didn't do anything wrong." But the officers handcuffed her and led her to the patrol car. Maya saw Edith on her porch, looking satisfied. The once inviting neighborhood now seemed like a menacing place. At the police station, Maya was taken to an interrogation room. The harsh lights and cold chair added to her discomfort. The officers presented a plastic bag with small yellow pellets, claiming they were rat poison found in the cookies and a similar bottle in her garden shed. Maya was in disbelief. "I just moved in. I don't have rat poison," she cried. But the officers, seeing Edith as a respected long-time resident, were skeptical. They questioned her about her relationship with Edith, her background, and her reasons for moving. Maya felt trapped. How could she prove her innocence against such false accusations? After hours of interrogation, Maya was told she'd be held overnight for more questioning. In the holding cell, she was filled with despair. The cold walls seemed to mock her dream of a new home in Golden Hills. She wondered how a simple act of kindness could turn into this nightmare, and, most importantly, how she could clear her name. After her arrest, Maya returned to a community that had already judged and condemned her. Everywhere she went in Golden Hills, she felt the weight of the neighbors' stares and the whispers that followed in her wake. The once quiet streets now seemed to echo with her shame, and she found it increasingly difficult to leave her house. One day, when Maya was at her lowest point, there was a soft knock at her door. To her surprise, it was Clare, the young neighbor who had shown her a glimmer of kindness before. Clare's expression was a mix of concern and determination. "Can I come in?" she asked, glancing nervously over her shoulder as if afraid of being seen. Once inside, Clare immediately blurted out, "I don't believe any of it. I know you wouldn't do something like that." Maya felt a rush of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "You have no idea how much that means to me." Clare's face darkened as she continued, "I wish I could do more. But people here, they've known Edith forever. They'll take her word over anyone else's, especially." She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "Especially someone who looks like me," Maya finished for her, her voice flat. Clare nodded, unable to meet Maya's eyes. "I'm so sorry. I know it's not right, but that's how it is here in Golden Hills. Edith and some of the others, they think they're preserving the character of the neighborhood, but it's just a bunch of nonsense." Maya sank onto her couch, feeling the weight of the situation bearing down on her. "So what am I supposed to do? Just pack up and leave?" she asked, hating how small her voice sounded. Claire shook her head emphatically. "No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I just thought you should know what you're up against so you can be prepared." Over the next few days, Maya and Claire started working together. Maya was determined to clear her name, and Claire was eager to help expose the truth about Edith and the unfair practices in Golden Hills. Claire began to do some digging. She talked to people who had lived in the neighborhood for a long time, trying to find out if there had been similar cases in the past. One afternoon, Claire rushed over to Maya's house, her eyes wide with excitement and horror. "I found something," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't the first time something like this has happened in Golden Hills." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" Claire took a deep breath. "Edith, she's done this before. Not the poisoning accusation specifically, but she's driven out other families. Families that didn't fit her idea of who should live here. And it's always been subtle." She explained that Edith would make constant complaints to the Homeowners Association, HOA, even when there was no real issue. She would spread rumors about new families, making them feel unwelcome. And because Edith had lived in the neighborhood for so long and had influence over many of the longtime residents, others would often follow her lead. Maya was shocked, but also angry. How does she get away with it? And how has no one stopped her? Classight. Most people here, they don't really disagree with her. They might not be as active as she is, but they're not too bothered to see the neighborhood stay the way it is, a predominantly white community. And when families start to feel the pressure, they usually just leave quietly, not want to cause a fuss. Maya's resolve strengthened. "We need to expose this, not just for me, but for everyone she's hurt." Over the next few weeks, Maya and Claire worked tirelessly. They dug into old property records, looking for signs of discrimination. They tracked down former residents who had moved away and interviewed them. Slowly but surely, they began to piece together a disturbing pattern. Several non-white families had moved into Golden Hills over the years, only to leave within a short time. At first, they had given vague reasons for leaving, like personal reasons, or it just didn't work out. But as Maya and Claire dug deeper, they discovered that these families had faced constant harassment. One former resident, a Hispanic man named Carlos, told them how he and his family had been the subject of constant noise complaints, even though they were a quiet family. An Asian American couple recounted how their children were excluded from neighborhood activities and playdates. Maya and Claire realized that it wasn't just Edith. There was a whole group of longtime residents who were working together to keep Golden Hills the way they wanted it. They used a combination of social pressure, manipulation of local officials, and subtle but persistent harassment. As the court date for Maya's trial approached, Maya and Claire knew they had a difficult battle ahead, but they were determined to bring the truth to light. Maya was no longer just fighting for herself. She was fighting for justice and for a community that should be inclusive for everyone. She knew that the road ahead would be tough, but she was ready to face whatever challenges came her way. The trial day arrived, and the courthouse was packed. Maya, accompanied by her lawyer Lisa Daniels, entered the courtroom. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and she could feel the community's eyes on her, filled with a mix of curiosity and judgment. Edith sat in the front row, looking prim and self-righteous. The prosecution began by painting Maya as a hostile newcomer who had maliciously tried to harm Edith, a respected member of the community. Edith took the stand, her voice shaking with what seemed like emotion as she recounted her false version of events. "I don't know why she would do this to me," she sobbed. "I was just being a good neighbor." Maya watched in disbelief as Edith's performance seemed to sway the jury and the spectators. The judge, a stern-looking man, listened intently, nodding at times as Edith spoke. Maya felt a growing sense of despair. Despite her and Claire's preparations, it seemed the case was slipping away. When it was the defense's turn, Lisa Daniels stood up with determination. "Your Honor," she said, "the defense will present evidence that not only clears my client, but also exposes a long-standing pattern of discrimination and harassment in Golden Hills." A murmur spread through the courtroom. Edith shifted uneasily in her seat, her usually calm expression cracking a bit. Lisa then presented the evidence they had collected. There were testimonies from former residents who had been forced out of Golden Hills by Edith's actions. Documents showed how the HOA selectively enforced rules against non-white families. Records of biased police responses were also presented, revealing the systemic nature of the discrimination. As the evidence was laid out, the jury's expressions changed from believing Edith to shock and disbelief. Even the judge, who had initially seemed inclined to trust Edith, leaned forward, his brow furrowed in concentration. Just as it seemed things were turning in Maya's favor, the prosecution objected, claiming the evidence was irrelevant to the case. The judge, after a moment of thought, agreed and told the jury to disregard most of what they had heard. Maya's heart sank. They had come so close, only to be stopped at the last moment. Lisa returned to her seat, looking frustrated and disappointed. The trial continued, but Maya felt like she was in a dream. The words of the lawyers and the reactions of the jury blurred together. Was this how it would end, with Edith's lies winning? Suddenly, there was a commotion at the back of the courtroom. The doors burst open, and Clare rushed in. All eyes turned to her as she walked purposefully towards the front. The judge, annoyed by the interruption, said sharply, "Miss Hastings, if you're here to watch, take a seat. We're in the middle of a trial." But Clare didn't sit. She walked up to the bench, her hands shaking slightly, but her voice steady. "Your Honor, I need to speak. There's something everyone needs to know." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Edith's face paled, and she looked very nervous. "Order in the court," the judge shouted, banging his gavel. He looked at Clare sternly. "Young lady, this is very irregular. We're in the middle of a trial." "I know, Your Honor," Clare replied, her voice getting stronger. "But what I have to say is directly related to this case. It's about the truth of what's been going on in Golden Hills." The judge thought for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but be quick and remember you're under oath." Clare took a deep breath and started speaking. "I've lived in Golden Hills all my life," she said. "Over the years, I've seen people like Edith Carpenter drive out those they think don't belong. It's happened again and again. Families move in with hopes, only to be harassed, isolated, and finally forced to leave. And it's not just Edith. There are others who work together to keep Golden Hills a certain way." Clare then took out her phone. "I have proof. Text messages from our neighborhood group chat where Edith and others planned to get rid of Maya. They saw her as a threat to their idea of the community." The judge leaned forward, interested. "Miss Hastings, are you willing to submit these messages as evidence?" Clare nodded firmly. "Yes, Your Honor. And there's more. I have records of HOA complaints that were selectively enforced against minority homeowners. I have testimonies from former residents who were driven out, and I've witnessed Edith's unfair treatment of Maya and others." As Clare spoke, the courtroom was silent. Maya felt a mix of relief, gratitude, and hope. The truth was finally coming out. The judge turned to Edith. "Miss Carpenter, do you have a response to these allegations?" Edith, her composure completely gone, stammered, "That's not true. She's lying. This is a conspiracy against me." But her protests were weak compared to Clare's evidence. The jury exchanged meaningful looks, and Maya could sense that the situation had finally changed in her favor. The judge called for a recess to review the new evidence. The courtroom buzzed with excited whispers. Maya caught Clare's eye and silently mouthed, "Thank you." Clare nodded, smiling a little despite the tears in her eyes. When the court reconvened, the atmosphere had changed completely. The prosecution struggled to keep their case against Maya. Edith, who had seemed so sure of herself before, now sat slumped in her chair, avoiding everyone's gaze. The trial had taken a decisive turn, and Maya dared to hope that justice would finally be served. After the recess, the courtroom reconvened with a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The prosecution, now faced with Clare's compelling evidence, struggled to maintain their case against Maya. The once confident Edith sat slumped in her chair, her face pale and her eyes avoiding the gazes of those around her. The jury, having carefully considered the new evidence and testimonies, did not take long to reach a verdict. The foreman stood up and in a clear voice announced, "We the jury find the defendant, Maya Anderson, not guilty of all charges." A wave of relief washed over Maya. She felt tears welling up in her eyes as the weight of the past weeks finally lifted from her shoulders. It was a moment of vindication, but she knew there was more to come. The judge, his expression solemn, then addressed the courtroom. "In light of the evidence presented by Ms. Hastings, I am ordering a full investigation into the practices of the Golden Hills Homeowners Association and the conduct of certain residents, including Edith Carpenter. This court will not tolerate systemic discrimination and harassment." His words resonated through the courtroom, marking the beginning of a new chapter for Golden Hills. As Maya left the courthouse, she was met with a mixed reception from the community. Some neighbors, those who had privately felt uncomfortable with the status quo but had been too afraid to speak up, now rallied around her. They brought casseroles, offered sincere apologies, and expressed their hopes for a more inclusive Golden Hills. These were the neighbors who had always known that the community's strict conformity and exclusionary practices were wrong, but had lacked the courage to oppose them. On the other hand, a significant number of residents remained hostile. They saw Maya as the cause of the upheaval in their once peaceful neighborhood. These individuals refused to acknowledge the deep-seated injustice that had been exposed. They clung to their old ways, believing that the community's traditional, homogeneous nature was being threatened. Edith and her closest allies, who had been at the center of the discriminatory practices, now faced legal consequences. Edith was found guilty of false accusations and conspiracy to discriminate. She was ordered to pay a hefty fine and complete hundreds of hours of community service focused on promoting diversity and inclusion. In the days following the trial, Maya found herself at crossroads. Despite her legal victory and the exposure of the truth, she couldn't shake the memories of the first few terrifying weeks in Golden Hills. The isolation, the fear, and the constant judgment she had endured still haunted her. One evening, as she sat on her porch, deep in thought about her future, she saw Clare approaching. Clare had become a true friend throughout this ordeal, and Maya was grateful for her presence. "How are you holding up?" Clare asked, taking a seat next to Maya. Maya sighed, looking out over the quiet street. "I'm not sure," she admitted. "Part of me wants to stay and be a part of making Golden Hills a better place. But another part of me just wants to run as far away as possible. Is it crazy to think about leaving after everything we went through to stay?" Clare was silent for a moment, considering Maya's words. "I don't think it's crazy at all," she finally said. "You've been through so much. No one would blame you if you decided that the memories here are too painful. But did you hear about Edith?" Maya shook her head, curious. "She was found guilty," Clare explained. "False accusations and conspiracy to discriminate. The judge really came down hard on her. She has to pay a huge fine and do all that community service. And word is, she's selling her house. She can't face the new neighbors or the shame, I guess. She's moving away from Golden Hills." Maya sat back, processing this information. Edith's departure felt like the closing of a significant chapter in the community's history. It was the end of an era of exclusion and discrimination. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the sun set over the rooftops of Golden Hills. "But you know," Clare continued, "if you did decide to stay, I think you could really make a difference here. You've already started to change things, and there are so many people in the community who would stand with you. You've shown them that things can be different, and they're ready to work towards a more inclusive future." Maya thought about the neighbors who had come forward after the trial, expressing their support and their desire for change. She thought about the children in the community and how staying and fighting for inclusivity could shape a better future for them. In that moment, she made her decision. "I'm staying," she said, her voice firm with resolve. "This is my home now, and I'm going to fight to make it better." Claire's face broke into a wide smile. "I was hoping you'd say that," she said, reaching out to squeeze Maya's hand. In the weeks that followed, Maya threw herself into community activism. With Clare's help, she organized meetings to discuss ways to make Golden Hills more welcoming to everyone. They worked on revising the HOA policies, aiming to eliminate any discriminatory clauses and promote diversity. They also planned inclusive community events, bringing people of different backgrounds together. It wasn't an easy journey. There were still those who resisted change, who were used to the old, exclusive ways of the community. But slowly but surely, Maya began to see a shift. New families, including the Patels from India, the Rodriguezes from Mexico, the Lees from Vietnam, and the Kims from Korea, moved into Golden Hills. The once silent streets now buzzed with the sounds of different languages, the laughter of children from various cultures playing together, and neighbors chatting across fences, regardless of their ethnic backgrounds. Almost a year after the trial, on a sunny Saturday morning, Maya stood in her kitchen, putting the final touches on a plate of her grandmother's famous chocolate chip cookies. These cookies, which had once been used as a tool against her, now symbolized healing and community. She was taking them to welcome a new family that had just moved in down the street. As she stepped out onto her porch, plate in hand, Maya took a deep breath, savoring the warm summer air and the new, found sense of belonging. Golden Hills was far from perfect. There was still work to be done, prejudices to overcome, and wounds to heal. But as she walked down the street, Waving to neighbors and hearing the joyous laughter of children, she knew she had made the right decision to stay. This was her home, and together with allies like Clare and others who believed in change, she was determined to make Golden Hills a truly inclusive community, one small act of kindness at a time.
If this story touched you, show your support by liking and subscribing. Your encouragement helps us keep sharing memorable stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.